The moment the spire of Notre Dame Cathedral fell into the raging inferno. For hours, flames engulfed this iconic landmark, destroying an 800-year-old building that had survived 2 world wars. Thousands gathered to watch as a piece of French history crumbled before their eyes.
It's a monument above and beyond its religious meaning. It's something that represents the entire evolution of French civilization. So it's very dramatic to see something like this happening.
First, I felt really angry to learn that such a large, beautiful piece of art went up in smoke like that. I was really shocked, so when I heard the news, I ran straight here.
French President Emmanuel Macron was quickly at the scene.
We will rebuild this cathedral, all of us together. It's probably part of France's destiny, and it will be our project for years to come. I am committed to this.
While donations have already been pledged, the damage done is extensive. This is where this weekend's Easter services would have been held. Instead, firefighters have been trying to make the area safe as investigations start into what caused this devastating blaze. The fire may be out, but work on how to restore this historic building to all its former glory is only just beginning.
And let's get more now. We are joined by DW's very own Barbara Vazel, who is at the scene for us in Paris. And Barbara, you know, we're just beginning to get a sense now of the extent of the damage to the cathedral, both inside and out. What are you hearing?
The roof is completely gone. As we know, there is a huge hole gaping in the middle of the nave of the church, of the main big building, the belly of the church. That's where the spire fell in. And the outer walls have been largely saved. We have seen since the early morning experts sort of crawling around on the battlements and even on the bell towers, which seem to be safe enough to go up on, to find out what the structural damage might be, because that is much more complicated than just what we can see with our eyes now, which doesn't look too bad, but internally there might be further problems that will probably need stabilization. What has been saved is the centuries-old organ, but what have also been miraculously preserved are some of the famous stained windows in the church. Some are gone, we could see this. Some you just look up and you see the skies through them, but some others didn't crack and they sort of stayed in. And many paintings, of course, have suffered water damage. Some things could have been brought out during the night. Last night, there were some really courageous firefighters dragging stuff out. So it is a very mixed picture, but it is going to be a huge reconstruction effort here. One expert already talked about 15 to 20 years.
And, you know, aside from containing, assessing the damage, figuring out how they're going to deal with it going forward, there's also the big looming question, how did this happen, Barbara?
How can this happen? It was an accident, and it was a terrible accident. That really is what the Parisian prosecutor now thinks. He is starting interrogating workmen. People have been working on the site here yesterday, because we need to remind ourselves there was a renovation project going on the roof, and that was just around the spire. So something happened. Workmen stopped working yesterday around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Around 6:20, the first alarm went up. Around 7 o'clock, you could also already see the flames sort of shooting out through the roof. So did somebody leave a tool there plugged in that was still hot? Did some sort of cinder was set alight by work, soldering or welding or something? We don't know. The prosecution services are not quite sure whether they're ever going to find out. But yes, it was negligence in that sense.
Okay, so a number of theories swirling already. You know, when we just look at this cathedral itself, Notre Dame, this is really part of Paris's soul, Barbara. And you've been walking around the city today. You're in that area. How are people taking all of this in?
There's really a pervasive sense of sadness, and people, particularly who live in the center of Paris, feel that they have lost a relative. They have really lost something that was close to their heart. Because even for people who are not, who don't have religious ties, this is just a piece of the ancient Paris, and it gave people a sense of stability and identity. And also, Notre Dame was the place where Paris came to celebrate throughout the centuries when wars ended, and also they came to grieve. For instance, 4 years ago, after the attacks on the Bataclan, where there was this big mess inside and outside of Notre Dame being read, and so many people gathered and had this sense of community. So it is really a sense of Paris and of course France's identity, everybody's cultural heritage, and everybody feels very strongly connected to it. So it is like a death in the family, really.
Barbara Vazel in Paris. Thank you, Barbara. Well, Notre Dame is, of course, a landmark which is known and loved around the world. And we spoke with people here in Berlin for their reaction to last night's fire.
I'm happy that I was able to see the cathedral, and I'm shocked that it has now burnt down and that one will probably not be able to visit it for decades to come.
Me being French, I was very sad, and it's a bit special for me because my wife is going to Paris today, and she didn't feel like going anymore because it's one important landmark which is in the heart of the French people that has just disappeared.
I have been there last year, yeah, that's right. And well, of course, it's a very pity that that happened to that building. And I heard on the news that they're trying to rebuild that monument. So I'm very pleased that they want to rebuild it.
Well, one would hope that if similar work is done here in Germany, that care will be taken with historic monuments, and that something like this does not happen here. It's terrible.
Let's get more now. We are joined by Luc André, a freelance journalist and Berlin correspondent for Le Pognon and Radio France in Berlin. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us this morning. We know you're actually from Paris. What does Notre Dame symbolize to you and to the people of France?
I mean, France is a centralistic state. Notre Dame is the main church of the main religion in France, so it's an historical building. It's the place, as your correspondent said earlier in the program, it's a place where France celebrates and grieves when the national religious service, as for the terror attack back in 2015. The royalty has its ties to this church. Every big event can be celebrated. Famous personalities in France have a service there when they die. So it's like a huge symbol. It's also a place that has been popularized by some writers. We can think of Victor Hugo, for example, one of the famous. So it's a place you expect to be in the center of Paris, and it's already lucky that not all the buildings burned down yesterday.
So how do you see Paris recovering from this? Because as you've illustrated there, I mean, this is often one of the places within Paris where people do come when something traumatic were to happen in the city.
What I heard this morning, some experts said it will take 40 to 50 years to rebuild the cathedral as it was until yesterday. So we have to see also that one of the main touristic attractions of the capital was the largest, the most visited church in France. So it will have an impact on tourism, I guess. But as we see, there's already a lot of money pledges to rebuild. So I think France is gathering forces. It's a moment of unity to bring back the church. And it's interesting, as Emmanuel Macron was supposed to speak after the Yellow Vest movement yesterday night, and he cancelled it. And took the momentum to bring this moment of unity on his side.
Tell us a little bit more about that effort to fund the rebuilding, because I mean we've seen quite a phenomenon actually emerge. Many high-profile people making incredible donations.
Yeah, two of the largest, the richest families in France are doing a little bit of a competition with giving the more money. Pinot and other family, Pinot and Arnaud, the one gave 100 million, the other pledged 200 million. The city of Paris is pledging 50 million, the region around Paris 10 million. National subscription will be launched, and there's also private subscription on internet. So there's a real movement of sympathy to bring money to rebuild Notre Dame. But I would say the Catholic Church is the richest real estate owner in France. So maybe they could afford it, but it's interesting in a country where you have a separation of church and state that the public is so keen to bring public money into that.
Luc Andre, thank you so much for joining us this morning.